we just had the biggest nor'easter in at least a decade, bigger than the blizzard of 1978 in New England. And there's been a rash of blockbuster storms throughout the globe this year, and nobody, or virtually nobody, knows why. I predicted this event well in advance. The professional weather forecasters did not. Besides intuition, there's sound science that backed up my forecast that mainstream meteorology just doesn't seem to have a handle on yet. So in the psychic forecast, I'll break it all down for you, share future predictions, as well as how to prepare for the next blockbuster storm in case it happens in your backyard. Hi, Adam Bernstein here, psychic medium and degreed meteorologist. And in this video, I'll explain 3 possible factors that weather models probably don't pick up on that could have fed this storm and could be feeding other storms. And the first one is basically that the Earth is warmer. So this is global warming. Now, I know there's a lot of controversy around that. And human activity, in my opinion, my educated opinion, can move the needle, specifically with higher water vapor in the atmosphere that's a stronger greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. But the sun is the main driver of climate and of weather and so forth and so on. And when there's more heat on the planet, then there's more energy, and that feeds the storms that can make them more intense. So that's the first thing. Now, speaking of the sun, we're just starting the descending phase of solar cycle 25. So we're coming right out of solar maximum. This is a very notorious time, and I did some checking back for decades and was able to find a correlation. So let me dive into my notes for a second. The 2017 blizzard, we got 2 feet of snow in 9 hours here in the Catskill Mountains. That happened maybe roughly 2 years, 1.5, 2 years into the descending phase of solar cycle 24. There's Hurricane Sandy in 2012. That was during a solar maximum. There was 2005, the year of Hurricane Wilma, Hurricane Katrina, 26 named storms in the Atlantic, which is by far the record since they've been keeping records, which is a long, long time now. 2005 was during the descending phase of another solar maximum. Also, 2 of the most powerful nor'easters that I've ever witnessed here when I was living in New York City. One happened in 1992 where actually sheet metal was flying through the sky in New York City, and the East River flooded its banks, and all the FDR Drive was like flooded. I never seen that before. And then there was the 1993 March superstorm that buried Atlanta under like 1.5 or 2 feet of snow. Well, guess what? That was in the maximum descending phase. Also, to be clear, not every single eventful storm is going to happen during a solar maximum or a descending phase. What you want to do is look at the trends over a long period of time. And by looking at the trends and finding a correlation, that's how you can start to see that there is a pattern that is evolving here. So here's a little secret of how I was able to make more accurate forecasts than the National Weather Service even. And there's a reason for this, or a reason for why there's a tendency for there to be a spike in severe weather near the end of the solar maximum into the first part of the descending phase, as well as a reason why there's a spike in also storms after a very eventful solar event, like major X-class flares or series of them. The weeks that follow often produce very, very large storms. So let me dive into my notes. So there's a reason for this. Solar flares, coronal mass ejection, and filament ejection charge up the Earth's atmosphere. So the solar energy charges the ionosphere. We get the auroras. But it penetrates deeper, especially the plasma, the ionic plasma. Well, also the photonic radiation from the flares themselves. The light energy actually affects the Earth, and that affects the atmosphere. And then the CMEs affect the upper atmosphere, the magnetosphere, the ionosphere, that affects the stratosphere and down to the troposphere. It's basically adding solar energy into the system. You add more energy into a system, the more volatile it becomes. When you're talking about the atmosphere, volatility comes in the form of storms and severe weather. That could be cold outbreaks, even when the earth is warmer. That could be intense polar outbreaks that we've seen this winter, as well as heat waves, obviously, and tornadoes, hurricanes, floods, droughts, and all that stuff. So anyway, moving back into my notes, now during the descending phase, the radiation belts are charged, the ionosphere is charged, as well as after specific powerful events. But in general, this is the time late in solar maximum into the descending phase where everything's in max charge. There's more potential energy, and if you get the right atmospheric conditions, starting with the upper atmosphere, that forms a storm. And a coastal storm can feed on the warm waters of the ocean with the colder air coming from the continent. So right around the coast, that's where we get a lot of our bomb cyclone. You add this extra energy into the system, it's going to develop faster. It's going to bomb out even faster. Now, the stronger the storm is, the more likely it's to do something that we call cutting the gradient. In other words, moving north and west of its projected path, trying to sink more with its upper air support, basically. So that's a little bit of meteorology lingo there for you. The long and the short of it is, the stronger the storm, the more the tendency it is to move, to track north and west. And we've seen that 4 different times this winter. I predicted more snow than my Weather Channel app predicted, because I know the relationship. There's more energy in the system. I know it's going to feed the storm. Now again, sometimes atmospheric conditions can overwhelm the effects of the additional energy. So everything meteorologically has to be in place, mind you, but once you have that, then the additional energy can help to feed the storm and to magnify its effects, and thus create a more of a northerly and westerly track. 4 different times that happened this winter alone. So anyway, let me go back into my notes. So I take this into account. Current weather models don't. I don't believe that like the Euro and the GFS, I don't believe that's taking into account space weather and the energy that injects into the atmosphere in the system, or at least not as much as it should, which is why I think that my forecasts have been more accurate. And yeah, I'm psychic and intuitive, so I draw on that also. But put that aside, let's just talk about the science right now, okay? So anyway, back into my notes. So all 4 times I was right. All right. I think in 2 cases, we got twice the snow that was forecast in my area. I predicted it, but anyway, maybe I've explained that enough. So let's move on. So there's also the variability of weather modification and geoengineering, and that is a very touchy subject today. Many believe, and we'll see the memes coming up. This is scheduled to be released on Tuesday, so the memes will go up that this storm was geoengineered, it wasn't natural, and so forth and so on. So many believe that's the reason that we've had these stronger, more impactful storms lately. Now, I've been a conspiracy theorist decades before that was even a term, but I'm also the first one that will debunk a conspiracy theory that I don't feel is correct. Now, I've been aware of weather modification for over 30 years, just through feeling, through intuition, just feeling like the systems just don't feel right. It feels like they've changed. Things that I've read, other teachers, other theorists or whatnot, and looking more into the science of things. I know that the world we live in, I won't rule that out as a factor. That said, factors of a warmer Earth, more energy into the system, and good old-fashioned meteorology of how clashing air masses and certain upper air patterns will feed storms, all of those can explain 100% the storms that we've had all winter, including the January one. Now, again, it can explain. That doesn't disclude that there could be something else at play. And you guys, let me know in the comments what you think about that. I'm open to the possibility, and like I said, I know the world we live in. If there's a motive, if there's the ability to do that, and all that, it could be. So anyway, and that said, I also have no doubt that they are experimenting and maybe implementing weather modification, especially in mesoscale systems that are smaller. But the amount of energy and manpower required to modify large-scale systems seems to be beyond our technological capabilities. However, the technology does exist and I'm not aware of. So, you can take that all with a grain of salt if you want. So I'll call this the wild card for now. But like I said, warmer Earth, space weather, and meteorology can explain what just happened. So what does this mean moving forward? So I do think the winter's not over yet here in the Northeast, the U.S., or anywhere, but especially here. And I keying in around March 16th, that feels like there could be another big snow or big event right around that time. So keep an eye on that. I do see the drought flood cycle continuing to strengthen, and that's resulting in shortages of water, especially when you add the AI and the amount of water it takes to cool down the data processing centers. So that, bigger floods, we've been seeing that, especially, as we're in the solar max in the descending phase, but also bad droughts and fires. I think also as we go into March and April, we're shifting more into more western storms here in the U.S., as well as European, that could approach record levels. Increased weather records. Okay, I just said that, right? Increased. Anything else about the weather? I think I've got more in my notes. If not, I'll it's in my brain. But increased earthquake activity, because also the geology, the earth is being fed by this extra energy. So that could be another big one around the Kamchatka Peninsula, around Japan, also around New Zealand, Fiji, and that area is big. Also, look around Chile, South America, up to Ecuador, California, really anywhere. And I have more specific forecasts on that in other videos. But if I get more specific information, if I feel an event coming, where it's coming, I'll definitely let you know. Like when I predicted the 8.8 in Kamchatka last July, to the date, mind you. So that can come through psychically sometimes, not all the time. And of course, activity picks up around Indonesia, Malaysia. There's just a 7.0 or 7.1, a deep earthquake in Malaysia. So we're starting to see that activity starting to ramp up after a very quiet period of earthquakes over the last 6 weeks or so. I was also seeing a huge volcano around an island, and there's a lot of islands, certainly around Indonesia would be my first thought about that. But the Pacific Northwest and the Cascadian subduction down into the northern San Andreas and the other faults around that area, keep an eye out. There's more energy there. It feels like something in the next couple of months is going to happen in that area also. So let me see, what else? So I think Hurricane 2027, the Atlantic hurricane for 2027, will be very intense. I think 2026, we're going to have a very big one, maybe a record one in the U.S. and 2 landfalls. But with the growing El Nino, that tends to suppress Atlantic hurricanes. But I think 2027 is going to be off the charts. We'll still be in the effect of the descending phase then. But the Pacific hurricane season may be very active this year. Watch out Hawaii, watch out the West Coast for that. I think we will have a very active severe storm season here in the United States, which peaks in May, perhaps record tornadoes, then a very active thunderstorm season in the summer. Also, increased solar activity affects collective consciousness, and again, there's a known correlation. Now, getting back to weather, some people, and I may get comments in this video that'll claim that I'm wrong, that solar activity doesn't affect Earth weather or whatever. But to be honest, in my OCD way, I've been going over a lot of stuff for decades. And again, it's not every time. These are just patterns and trends. But the patterns and trends distinctly tell us that solar maximum, especially in the descending phase after the peak, has a lot of record and high-end storms and other geological events around that time. But also geopolitical events tend to peak around that because the energy that affects the Earth also affects our consciousness. It affects the collective consciousness. So there tend to be more wars, more revolution. We've been seeing that lately. That's going to be increasing, basically. So more wars, like what's going on in Iran and the U.S., which was part of my forecast, either the winter or the 2026 or the February or January, all the above. Trump will likely have a lot of problems, as well as other world leaders, King Charles and prime ministers, and a lot of different areas come to mind with that. Maybe leaving office soon, even in the extreme. Watch out for April, especially. Speaking of April, early in the month, we could see extreme, something extreme could happen, like a major solar event. Part of that because a large comet is going to be flying very, very close to the sun right around that time. So watch out for that, as well as major events in world politics, major changes in that area and the such. Also, we're in a global awakening cycle as well that could lead to discoveries like what I predicted in Antarctica with the pyramid and the cities recently discovered under that, or the ancient or big news around UFOs or extraterrestrials, where I had predicted to the month of February that there'd be a big announcement from either Trump or the United Nations. So far, nothing from the UN, but Trump did have a very big announcement about that just last week, for that matter. And what else? It's in a more volatile environment, more storms, more floods, more major events happen. So prepare, and let me go over a few things you can do to start preparing. And if you're enjoying the video, please like it and hype it, share it, comment, and if you enjoy this content, subscribe to the Medium channel. Okay, commercials done. Back to the main event. More volatile environment, more storms, floods, major events. Prepare by having an emergency plan and having your survival needs in case long-term power outages happen. Let me start by saying prepare yourself psychologically, emotionally, as well as spiritually. Do your heart-brain work. I'll flash a video above. That keeps you in the eye of the storm energetically, and therefore when there's a lot of stress in the world and a lot of programming and a lot of stuff going on, you tend to be more like grounded. You're not like in a panic mode, and you can think a lot more clearly for that. And doing your meditation, keep your body strong, yoga, breath exercises. So be spiritually strong. That is key. But also have your emergency plan, your backup plan. I've got months of food stored. Canned food, dry food is really, really good. With the weakening magnetic field, that's actually allowing more solar energy into the system, into the Earth, which is enhancing the auroras and the solar storms. So that could be a global power outage in the extreme. But more succinctly, big storms, like ice storms, large-scale blizzards and stuff like that, power could be out for days or even weeks. You want to have your supplies, medications, and I have a little list. Money, that's a good idea if you can. Medication, supplies, batteries, toilet paper, of course, right? Dry canned food, heat, water. How are you going to handle water or heat if the faucets don't work and you don't live near a creek? If you do get a life straw or a simple filtration device, indoor safe heating stove is a good idea to have in case you can't heat food for a while. And there's other things, and this is where I'm going to ask you guys to fill in the gaps because I don't want this video to be super long. So what else should we be doing? Let us know in the comments what else we should be doing to prepare if there's an emergency and we don't have power, we can't gas up our generators, we can't drive, and it's for a long period of time. What else do we need? And the added energy is also fueling the ascension, right? So basically, I just did a video recently. I'll flash it over here about how this energy is increasing global ascension and what you can do to take advantage of these very powerful energies to safely and powerfully ascend or to have spiritual awakening. And over here, I have a psychic forecast exploring how this extra energy is going to affect the economy. So hopefully you find that helpful. Let me